so that we can capture this wonderful event. So again, thank you all for being here tonight. I'm Kyle Kreider. I'm the Program and Policy Director for Alabama Interfaith Power and Light and the People's Justice Council. This is our monthly From Resilience to Restoration public Zoom. We'd love to tell you more about resilience and restoration. We will do that at the end of the call if there is time. But we have a very special guest with us tonight, Kathy Egland with EEECHO. And I'll let Kathy tell you more about herself and her organization. In fact, let me turn it over to Kathy now because I'm doing a poor job of playing host and admitting people, technical directors. We admit folk to the webinar. So, Kathy, please do us the honor of introducing yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and your organization. And again, thank you for being here tonight.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for the invitation. I am just going to say that my name is Kathy Eglund. I am from Gulfport, Mississippi. I live about a quarter of a mile from the Gulf of Mexico. And I co-founded EECHO, which stands for Education, Economics, Environmental, Climate, and Health Organization, to address the unique challenges of not only people in the Gulf region, but also to address all of the climate, the global climate challenges that we're facing. And we realized that we needed a holistic approach. And that was the reason that we founded EECHO, because we need to look at the entire, when we're looking at this, we need to look at the economics, because a lot of times, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later in the presentation, we can't ignore one and focus on the other. So I am ready to start when you are. If I can go ahead and start sharing the screen.
Please.
So first of all, and I'm very tech challenged, so you'll have to be patient with me. I should have asked quickly before we started, how do I advance my screen? But I'm assuming if I hit enter, there we go. It will advance it. So can everyone see the screen, or is it partially hidden like it is on my computer? Okay, everyone can see it. Okay, so I want to start off with, and the reason I'm doing this is because I gave a presentation. I was asked by this organization to give a presentation about wood pellets, and another presenter and I made this presentation, and the first question afterward was, what are wood pellets? So I'm going to start off, and if some of you know, it's okay, but from that point on, I always don't like to assume what people know and what they don't know. So I'd like to go ahead and begin with wood pellets are tiny. They're tiny little pellets. They look like pellets, as you see here in the picture, but they come from logs. They come from whole trees, which and they were developed and they're used for mostly in countries in Europe. And they're used for fuel. And this came about as a climate myth. It came about because we know that we need to transition from fossil fuels. It's a must. We don't have any other choice. But in this particular case, we must get our climate and the warming of our climate to well below 1.5 C. However, in this case, when we're looking at wood pellets, we are looking at a situation where the so-called solution is as bad, or if not worse, than the problem that we're facing. So the wood pellets, this process is a very harmful, toxic process from beginning to end, from the time of the cutting. And I'm going to back up a little bit when I asked the question about why should we care. If we cared about the Jackson water crisis. I know everybody was sending water to Jackson. I can remember during Hurricane Katrina when everybody was sending, they just couldn't felt that they couldn't do enough. They were sending water. They were trying to take care of our needs. I remember when people cared about the death of George Floyd. If you care about issues like that, you should care about wood pellets. It doesn't matter if it's not in your backyard, it is going to adversely impact everyone in some form or fashion. And so this is why, a lot of people, since it's not in their communities, the greatest impact of this right now is in the Southeast U.S. But you're looking at, first of all, and I'll get into this a little later, you're actually extending coal because they are co-burning wood pellets with coal in these facilities. So we're actually depleting our forests here in the U.S. To act as a climate solution or an energy source. We're shipping these pellets. We're poisoning, literally poisoning our communities and shipping this climate myth of a solution to foreign countries and and mostly foreign-based corporations are involved in this process. So every step of the process, from the cutting of the trees to the drying, just every step along the way is a very toxic process. And you're looking at, things that it can cause, some of the dangers that the wood pellets manufacturing can cause. And when you look at some of the things that the emissions that they have, I don't want to get too heavy into the science and the chemicals because I'm not sure where everybody's knowledge level is of this process, but just know that it is extremely toxic and extremely hazardous. It's also extremely flammable. So these are just some of the um, chemicals that this process emits when they are converting these trees to these wood pellets. And they once they are converted to wood pellets, they are usually trucked to ports and then they're shipped to countries, as I mentioned earlier, mostly in the EU, but the EU and the UK. But now Asia is looking into this. In addition to the PM2s, the VOCs, the NOx, the CO, the CO2, we also have exposure to acrolein. Uh, I personally experienced this, and I have been researching this process for years now. And I went to a community in Gloucester, Mississippi last year, and it was the first time that I actually stood at the fence line while they were loading the wood pellets into a truck. And I did not, I immediately, I took my mask off from the COVID because I was doing an interview for a UK documentary. And I immediately became sick to my stomach, my nose, throat, and my nose and throat burned, and my eyes burned, and I just could not figure out what was happening. And then I looked up, and someone pointed out I was actually covered in wood pellets debris from head to toe. And then I looked at the trailer park that I was standing in front of, and it really haunted me when I came home because I was able to leave and come home. The people in the trailer park were, I mean, they were there and they had no other choice because that was their home. That was the only place they had to stay. Methanol is another highly toxic chemical that is emitted from this process. And also formaldehyde. I know a lot of you are familiar with formaldehyde, but that is another toxic chemical that's in this process. So I wanted to meet four of the primary offending companies that are imperiling our vulnerable communities and destroying our forests. And these are the names Drax and Viva, Pinnacle, and German Pellets. There are more than four, but these are the four major ones. And as you can see, these are where they are based, some of their headquarters where they're based. And I also want to look at this because this kind of shows you the production side of this. I keep waiting on some updated information, but this is the best that I have for now that shows you where the production is as opposed to where the consumption is, the countries that are consuming these. And okay, this is where the rubber meets the road. And this is where the environmental racism comes in, because this is a map that shows you the the EJ communities and the location of these wood pellets or these biomass plants. And as you can clearly see, they are located in environmental justice communities and mostly in the Southeast U.S. And I always like to use these maps to make a case. And this map, one of the things that really caught my attention was when you look at the map of the former cotton trade states and you compare that with the map of the wood pellets trade state, you can see that they're almost identical states. And these are also the states with the highest population of African Americans, the most economically depressed states, as well as the most climate vulnerable states. And these are the states that have been targeted. And a lot of times, mostly because of the economic desperation. So let me mention that already these are the states who are suffering from the traditional fossil fuel energy use. And now we are using what is being claimed as a solution to re-imperil the exact same population. Again, here are map comparisons of the highest percentage of Black population as compared to the wood pellets manufacturing facilities. And let me say that we talk about hate crimes. We talk about people who have suffer criminal penalties. These manufacturers are being fined, but there are no criminal penalties. They are deliberately emitting well beyond their legal limits of poison or toxin, but there is no criminal liabilities. And I think we must change our laws in the U.S. to prevent this type of environmental racism. As far as I am concerned, it is as awful as any hate crime. In our NAACP energy toolkit, there was a statement made, and at that time, when the toolkit came out, I didn't know nearly enough about biomass as I do now. But the research showed that African Americans are more likely to live near these biomass production plants. So I told you about earlier when I visited this community, Gloucester, Mississippi, and I visited this plant. This was the Drax Met plant. First of all, just driving into the plant, as you'll see in the photo that I took on the far left of my screen, I'm not sure where it would be on yours, but you see these logs coming in. Now, these companies will claim that they are just using waste woods, and nothing aggravates me more than when I am in Europe and I see they're advertising that they're using waste wood because they are cutting whole, healthy trees. And the lady, Miss Camilla, the lady standing out in front of her home is now was recently burned, but she was stating, "I can't breathe." No different from George Floyd and any of the other African Americans who have been killed by police violence. in this community. This community was fined $2.5 million. Now, let me put that in perspective. That is a drop in the bucket from the amount of profit that they make every day. They are getting billions of dollars in subsidies from the EU. And they are also, especially the UK, and they're also getting subsidies from our cities and states. And the federal government is now embracing this dangerous, toxic technology. This, we asked about the illegal emissions limit several years ago, but it took MDEQ, they had to be presented with the evidence. They didn't even do their own testing to come up with the evidence. Another organization, nonprofit, the Environmental Integrity Project, that's made up of former EPA enforcement officials, actually did the testing and presented this evidence to Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality. And then after they presented them the evidence, it took them 2 years because the company kept, I call them liar, liar, plants on fire, because they lied and lied until they couldn't lie anymore, until they were backed in a corner. And then MDEQ handed down this fine. And I will say, and then they're saying, well, it's the largest fine to date. Well, don't pat yourselves on the back, because this was for 8 years worth of pollution. And the irony of this, they didn't even have the decency to tell the Gloucester residents that they had been exposed to these toxic levels of pollutions ever since they had been operating. And this is happening. I feel like people have the right to know this. And what they do is, this is what these companies do typically. They come set up, they claim that they are going to be a low source emitter, and they'll say that they're going to be emitting, they'll say right below the 250-ton EPA limit that would require them to have more protection. But with all the money, all the subsidies that they are getting, they are so greedy. They are so consumed by greed that they don't even care enough to provide the best available protection. They will do any and everything to skirt provisions of the Clean Air Act. Just last year, we had a British company that agreed to pay $3.2 million for air pollution, but this was combined, this was for 2 Louisiana wood pellets plants. So I always look, whenever I see that they've been fined, the first thing I do is look at the demographic of these locations. So as you can see here in Bastrop, Louisiana, they have a poverty rate of 41.9, Black population of 78.6, 78.9. In Urania, Louisiana, poverty rate of 40.40%. In the race here, the Black population is only a third, is not as pronounced as it is in other areas. I don't care. I heard my co-founder of EEECHO, Ruth Story, say she doesn't care if the people are polka dot. We don't think that people should be exposed to these toxins. But one thing that we know, that the poverty rate has a lot to do with it. And I didn't mention the demographics of the previous slide that I had in Gloucester, which had a very similar, it had a much higher poverty rate. It's about a 60+% poverty rate in Gloucester, and about 85% Black population. And it's a little less than 1,000 people. Recently, a whistleblower from Enviva, which is the second largest producer, came forward, and he even talked about their claims of being good for the planet, and they're claiming to only be using waste wood. And these are photos of where they are clear cutting forests, and they are doing this at the expense of, trees provide a valuable valuable service for us as it relates to climate change, because they store the carbon. And so immediately, as soon as they cut these trees, then they are releasing carbon into the atmosphere. And so we have all experienced, or we have seen other areas in one way or another, we've all experienced some level of climate change. And so trees are valuable. And we have to look at this. And one of the things that they do is that these corporations come into communities who are, I mean, just desperate for any type of economic prosperity. And they make claims of jobs. They make claims of, just making the community better. I don't know of any community who have said that their community is better because these corporations have been there. The jobs rarely ever go to local people. And the few jobs that do go, they're temporary jobs without benefits. And there are several, one of the, and I have some, several other places. There are several links, much information where you can look, because they will say, they will make all of these false claims. And it's just shameless to me. All of this stuff, again, I say they should have criminal penalties assessed to some of the things that they're doing, because they're exploiting poor people. And they are, people who care about their families. And we know that there is a need to put food on the table, and people understand that. Um, but what they're not told is this family that you love so much, that you're trying to feed and keep healthy, that you're sacrificing their health. And our health is not for sale. Um, there are a couple of sources. Dirty Deception, How the Wood Biomass Industry Skirts the Clean Air Act. That was one of the most comprehensive reports that I read, and that talks a lot about this industry. If you would like to look at that, it will give you a lot more information. Dogwood Alliance, who I work very closely with as well, that Rev and the People's Justice Council and I have a great resources. These are documentaries that they have, because I think we all need to be mindful of this. We don't need to wait until down the road, until it's too late. I think we all have a responsibility. This isn't anything that you're going to be able to look at on television and see where people are being harmed, as we see cell phone capturing videos now of some of the brutality and some of the deaths that's happening to our communities. Here is another one. Which was a campaign that they had in the UK last year, where these industries, and I was quoted as saying that we need to stop using jobs to justify polluting people. We have just got to stop putting profit before people. Again, this is one of a train coming in from to a power station near Selby in the UK in Drax. So again, what a lot of people, and even some of my climate activist colleagues, it's painful, because a lot of times they want to ignore it, because they say it's not coal, but it's coal burning. You're still using coal, so you're still prolonging the life of coal. And it's not going to get us below the 1.5 C if it is emitting um, um, CO2 in the atmosphere, and it's just not being properly accounted. Thank you.
Wow. Ms. Kathy, that is Wow, it's frightening. It's inspirational. It is all of those things. But I'm going to let the folks respond as well. I see Rev Caraway has his hand up. So let's start the Q&A with Rev, and thank you again.
Kathy, thank you so much. Wonderful, marvelous presentation. One of the things that was not mentioned in it is that the people who are most affected by this do not own the land that the timber is harvested from. Most of these are large landowners that sell the timber rights to the trees that grow on their property. And so the economic benefits don't trickle down to the people who are most affected by it. And looking at the maps, I see that most of the harvesting is done primarily, I'm guessing, in the pine forest. Is that correct? Or is it the gum trees, the trash woods that are used for particle board and that types of things for the building industry in this country? But here we're exporting something that can absorb CO2. So I will just kind of leave it at that. And, but there's so much involved, and having lived in Louisiana and Mississippi myself, I certainly understand it.
Absolutely. And you made a great point. And this is this industry, just like the fossil fuel industry, because I've been at this for quite some time. They use this divide and conquer with the jobs, and with the even when we mention it to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, they say, well, Black farmers want to make a profit. So now you're going to pit Blacks against Black. Well, first of all, even the landowners who are selling their trees aren't getting the worth of their trees. And my answer when I heard the Department of Agriculture say, well, Black foresters want to profit from their trees. Okay, trees provide a valuable service for us. Pay them for keeping their trees. I'll be willing to bet you they would lots rather keep their trees than to sell them. So we're always looking at the economic benefits. We don't just go into a town and say, we don't care about the jobs. We don't care about the economic benefits. But we're trying to do this is a very, very complex issue. And there are so many parts to it. It's so difficult. And it's something that we have, so there are just so many directions I could have gone in with this tonight, and I wasn't sure exactly where to go, except just to start at the basic and the environmental racist impacts.
I think if you look at who the landowners are and who's profiting from it, you will find out that it's not the BIPOC communities in these locales. It is absentee landowners for the most part.
Yes, who are not exposed to the toxic pollution from these facilities.
I've got one other question. When they make the wood pellets, don't they use a toxic glue in making them?
All of those toxins that I listed, there are just so many toxins, and then they're highly flammable as well. So I didn't really, I had done so much research, so I had a lot of stuff in my head, but until I went to visit this community and I went to, they won't let you on site, but we were able to see through this chain link fence. So I was able to see a lot of the process. And then it came clear to me some of the stuff that they say, because, some of the local governments still don't understand the harm that's caused. Like they told this community, well, listen, they came in and they're good corporate citizens. They're good corporate partners. They paid for this upgrade in our water facility. And had it not been for them, your water bill would have quadrupled. Well, what they did not tell them was they needed to upgrade the water system because it was needed for, for their production facility. And so it's all self-serving. And then they can turn it into a way to make it feel, make it look as if they're doing great things for the community. Very deceptive.
Have any studies been done to show the health impacts of people living in proximity to the plants that are producing these?
No health studies, no direct health studies correlation. We know that because like I said, the people in Gloucester, Mississippi didn't even know until we went into these communities to tell them that they had been exposed. And then they started going, oh, this is, could this have been? So there haven't been any direct correlation, but we know the symptoms associated with exposure to these toxins. And I actually, when I went, I never thought that I would be having an immediate reaction within, I was being interviewed. So he had asked me to take my mask off, and I never expected to have that type of reaction. So I didn't even really know what it, and someone else looked up the health impacts, what chemical could have caused that. So that's how I knew about the acrolein.
Thank you. And I would encourage others to just come off mute and ask a question or type it in chat if you're unable to come off mute. I know one of
And
my questions. Oh, I'm sorry. Go
Cal,
ahead.
I was going to mention to you, I'm possibly, hopefully, looking forward to may have the opportunity to visit the Drax plant in Yorkshire in the UK next month. So all of this firsthand, um, just being on the ground, these firsthand experiences are really helpful. And I do this so that I can come back and relay all of this to others. I see a hand from Clarice below.
Hi, I'm Clarice Freeler from Louisiana. I work for Taproot Earth. I'm a regional organizer. Also, this sounds so familiar because it sounds just like my community of Native Americans who are dealing with fossil fuels, the byproducts of the oil and gas industry in our fence line communities, where no one wanted to come and do any studies because they knew it would directly link that facility to our health problems. We fought our these waste sites for 7 years in the legal system, and it's still sitting there. But everything you've said, I took a lot of notes, and it's almost identical to my community, except for this is wood pellets are supposed to be much better than what we were with fossil fuel, which is not. It's almost identical with people being exposed and don't even know about it. The people here in my community didn't make any money off of the byproducts of the oil and gas industry. And they pitted the people against the companies because our people needed to work for the oil and gas industry. So no one wanted to fight it, but they knew it was destroying their lives and their health, but so scared to lose their jobs. And it makes it very difficult for people to understand. I would love to come down and meet you down there. I'm right here in Louisiana, about 60 miles south of New Orleans, and to see firsthand what exactly is going on. And I don't know how much I can do to help, but anything I can do to push along this situation, well, not situation, push along with you to help you to find solutions for this.
Thank you. And Clarice, let me mention that while it's the African Americans in the Southeast U.S. that's disproportionately suffering from this, is the indigenous population in Canada. The U.S. is the largest exporter of wood pellets. Canada is second, and it's the indigenous population in Canada that's being most adversely impacted by this process. So we were, and I was just at the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Conference of Parties in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, back in November, and was able to organize. I wanted to because we were at a global conference. I wanted to organize a group for a meeting with our U.S. Department of Energy. So we were able to quickly put together a group of activists from 6 continents to come and talk with our U.S. Department of Energy about the impacts in their on their continents as it relates to biomass.
Thank you. And for those of you who cannot see the chat, Chris Battle says, as Ms. Kathy stated, the fines are a drop in the bucket for the profits they are making. 2.5 million over 8 years is 312,000 per year. That's 26,000 per month. How can we get real penalties imposed on these violations?
Cal, let me say, the 2.5 million is less than what they get every day in profit. It doesn't even, let's not even go into the subsidies that they're getting. So that's a drop in the bucket. Again, I don't think these fines, with the amount of money that they're getting, they don't care about these fines. You could have fined them, $3 billion. It may have hurt a little, but it was not going to stop them until we assess criminal penalties for criminal acts, because these violations are criminal acts and they should be criminalized.
Amen.
And we've got an administration that's saying that this is the Environmental Justice Administration. Okay, let's start assessing criminal penalties.
Amen. Barbara Brandon says in chat, there are studies of the effects of this type of air pollution in other populations. See Physicians for Social Responsibility and take the link to see the compendium of harms from fracking. And also, acrolein is one of the toxins released by the Norfolk Southern train derailment in East Palestine. And there are also wood pellet factories. Are there also wood pellet factories in New England? She asked.
In New England area, yes, they have had some victories in that area, in the New England states area, that where they have been able to stop some. So that's been great. And I have to give a shout out to one of my biggest advocates and supporters, Allison Burchell, because there are people like Allison who will not allow, me to stand alone in this issue. They stand with me, stand by me, and they will not let our fellow advocates shove this aside. And I appreciate that.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Oh, Allison, take it away. You and your wonderful cat. I saw your cat earlier.
Yeah, oh, I know he's sick, you guys. So he'll be up and down a lot. He has cancer. So,
sorry.
Katherine, this was really digestible, succinct. Is this presentation going to be available so I can start showing it to, who? Yeah, it was really good. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I didn't know what the audience would be, but I just felt like, needing to start from the basic, like I said, because I thought the audience that we presented to before would have more knowledge, but when your first question is, what are wood pellets? Then I realized, I had to take my advice and something I always say, don't assume that your audience, don't make assumptions.
And
go ahead, Allison.
Sorry, do you have like a contingency that's going to go with you to England?
We were trying to find, yeah, we are trying to look, they were, the group, from my understanding, wanted 2 people from the Southeast U.S. So I know I was just asked about this, yesterday or day before yesterday. So it's just something that's still in the making. I know that the documentary that was shot was, they used that. I do know that Drax is having their, meeting at the time next month. They're having their annual stockholders or shareholders meeting.
Well, I would just like to help you make sure those people can afford to go.
Okay.
And Allison, it was good to see you on the international cross-cutting call earlier today.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that really needs to be part of U.S.CAN and the work that is being done there through the international cross-cutting team. And I know that you're connected with that, Kath, but I think everybody ought to be aware of that. And not just the Department of Energy, the Department of State needs to be involved in this because of treaty negotiations and whatnot.
And let me say that we have bought this before the Department of State. They will say that the emissions are being counted. They are not. Most of you who are familiar with Greta Thunberg, I hope I pronounced her last name correctly, when she talked about this fancy math, and I didn't want to get into this because it's kind of getting into in the weeds of the Paris Climate Agreement. But when they're not, they're basically in Article 6 of the Paris Climate Agreement, there are rules against what they call double counting of emissions. Those rules have basically resulted in zero counting of biomass emissions. So countries want to use the biomass, and then they can claim on their NDCs, nationally determined contributions, that their emissions are down when they're really not. So when the IPCC report comes up, and I don't want to lose anybody, comes out that we're getting warmer, that, we're going higher and not lower, then, why are you surprised?
You alluded to it, but there's so many parallels between this and what Clarice was talking about with St. James on the Mississippi River, Port Arthur and the chemical plants there. And when you get out into the Permian Basin with the fracking and the health impacts on indigenous communities out there as well. And so it's not just a health problem. It's not just a pollution problem. It's a moral problem. And we need to approach it from a moral standpoint. And it's sin.
Yes, it's a moral problem. It's a criminal problem. It's also a climate problem. It's a climate problem that's being touted as a solution. It's almost as if it's essentially what I tell people, saying that e-cigarettes is a solution for quitting smoking.
I gotta share the Nature Conservancy story.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So their position is it, like Catherine's been saying, it's a lesser of evils. And former governor of the state of Colorado even said at a meeting, it was JC who told us about this. Look, with climate change, the forests are going to burn anyway, so let's just use them to subsidize the power plants for as long as we need to. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I mean, so it really, like Mel, like you're saying, all these false solutions. I love the fact that U.S.CAN is going to pull people together to really attack the false solution piece. We have to do this, and this is the year to do it. It's maybe the last year to do it. So yeah,
So I will say this was the first time, and you know how long I've been pushing this, Allison, that we were able to get a side event on this topic in the blue zone of COP27. And we had side events that were off site. And it looks as if, you know, we've pulled together this people, advocates from 6 different continents who all had their version. And even in North America, Clarice, we had Canadian advocate who were, you know, could tell us the story and what was happening. And my friend from Australia who Put, who talks about this, who has tremendous knowledge on this, and I like the way she calls this climate colonialism. And I told her I'd definitely be using that term.
I think it's so important what she said about bringing everybody together at COP. And I think of all the negatives of this last COP, one of the positives were that you were able to bring that group together. A number of us who are working on the methane issue were able to get a global group together, and we are working globally on methane now. And so if we can continue working with these coalitions that are global, approaching the same issues, I think it's going to be very important for the long-term success of what we're doing.
Well, I am happy to report that I did not forget to hit record on this wonderful presentation with Q&A. So this weekend, with a little luck, it will be uploaded to our People's Justice Council YouTube channel. Please share widely. And Ms. Kathy has already provided a link to her slides to us. We will likewise, with your permission, of course, share those out. Are you okay with sharing the slides?
I am okay with sharing any and all information always. Always want everybody to know. The more we know, the more of us that know, the better for our climate, better for our country, the better for our globe. So,
amen. The People's Justice Council, as is Alabama Interfaith Power and Light, is an interfaith organization. And my own Judeo-Christian background says you cannot serve God and mammon. And we are seeing a lot of mammon servitude in these projects. And let me stop talking and open it back up for any other questions. Or I know we have at least one Gulf state partner, and I'd like to say just a few words about what all this has to do with our From Resilience to Restoration Zoom topic. But the first question is there anything else for Miss Kathy that has not been asked? We definitely want to honor her time. Okay. Well, let me just say, for those of you that this may be your first Zoom or your first introduction to this topic, we, the People's Justice Council, are, as I've already said, an interfaith organization, and we operate at the intersection of climate, energy, and justice. Let me read our little bio, because I think we do have some new folk here. We are a group of people committed to justice and equity for our neighbor and shared home. We are from various faith traditions and backgrounds. We operate at the intersectionality of justice and equity through interdisciplinary methods. We engage and equip communities with tools like these to build power from the grassroots up and to fight for justice at the policy level. Our beloved community consists of those that have been downtrodden, demeaned, and disenfranchised, along with those who want to do something about it. Our community is an interfaith and inclusive community who believe that we should be grounded in love for the creation and creator. That's us, People's Justice Council. And what we are calling from resilience to restoration is our first federal grant. From resilience to restoration is being funded by the National Academies, plural. It used to be National Academy of Science. Now it's National Academies, plural, of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, or NASEM is the acronym. They have provided us funding. It's Gulf state oriented to start with. We're seeking additional funding. We would love to take this beyond the Gulf South quickly, because our vision, which I'm happy to report the National Academies really liked, is a vision of moving from resilience to restoration. What does that mean? Well, that's a whole hour topic at least. But you know, when we talk to frontline communities, resilience is a bit of a a bit of a mixed message. You know, telling frontline communities we're here to help you become more resilient is like telling them we're here to help you roll with the punches. And no, we've got to stop pummeling our frontline communities. So we're trying to move from resilience to restoration. And in our National Academies grant, I mean, we are here, there, wherever we are called, to first to listen, to amplify voices, and once we understand we're possible to match resources with needs. So under the National Academies, a restoration grant, what we're calling a restoration plan, just has three components, and these are, you know, determined by the community. We don't want to lay we don't want to lay a blueprint down. We're just recording things under the appropriate heading and creating new headings where needed. And so in a recent community in Florida, for example, Rev Malcolm, my boss and our executive director, this community was focused on cultural restoration. But the three E's, as we say for our National Academies reporting, are ecological, because we've got to stop cutting trees. We need to be planting more of them. We need to restore reefs and protect wetlands. And, you know, it's the ecological stuff we've got to preserve, not just preserve, but restore. It's economic. It's anything you can put a price tag or an opportunity cost on. And in many cases, restoration is not the appropriate term here. Elevation is the appropriate term, but because we're talking about elevating communities to a position of economic power they have never held. And then there is, we're interfaith, there is the ecumenical component. We know toxic theology has gone into creating this problem. We are aiming to come to, well, combat is a bit of a colonial term, but to counter that with restorative theology. And like I say, we were pleasantly surprised. The National Academies loved our focus on frontline communities, like you're hearing about, like Gloucester. So that's enough talking about resilience to restoration. That's the Reader's Digest condensed version. But let me open it back up. I know we have at least one Gulf partner, Rev Caraway. Mel, would you like to say a little bit about what's going on in Texas, or your thoughts?
Well, right now, the partner organization is Texas Impact, which is a multi-faith organization that equips people of faith and conscience with information opportunities and outreach tools to educate their communities and engage with lawmakers on pressing public policy issues. And so we're in the midst of our legislative session right now. And so we're kind of distracted in a lot of ways. But one of the things that we are doing is we are spending a great deal of our focus on educating people to how they can take advantage of the IRA and the Inflation Reduction Act, and also other legislation and initiatives out of the federal government, that there is a great deal of money available for local implementation. And that implementation will be for restoration. And so this is one of the things that we're working with people in terms of emergency responses to climate-induced disasters. And so it's a very broad-ranging topic that we're working on, and a lot of it is educational. We've got, in fact, with Jerry, we were on a call this morning talking about how we can get a lot of the word out on this. And Jerry, here it is right here. This is our 8-page issue brief on the Inflation Reduction Act and how you can apply it in your local communities.
Mel, can you put a link to that?
Yeah, it's texasimpact.org. And
Okay.
and I don't have in front of me the specific link, but it is on the website. I had it earlier today, and
Okay. I'll find it, or I'll call you if I can't.
Absolutely.
And you bring up a really important point. I just had a big conversation last week with one of the high ups at the Department of Energy. This whole IRA grant process, most people in most communities do not have the resources.
They don't have the understanding.
They don't have the understanding. I'm dogging this one now. I'm angry. And
well, and I think that is what each of our roles are going to be, is to interpret and help connect people to those resources that are available. And otherwise, they'll be misused or not used.
well, I've asked Jonathan Hatfield at Department of Energy and some others. I want to see some workshops for our communities. We have a community in Colorado that I keep saying I'm trying to move from 1920 to 2030. I mean, it's, and unfortunately,
Thank you, Melanie.
Mel, thank you. Yeah, this is, and your concept, Kyle, Malcolm, Mel, of simplifying it in this way is so important, and helping communities reach out to the funding that is there, because right now it's just going to all the lithium battery people and stuff like that, and
a lot of it's sitting unused.
And there's a timeline for it. So, and for natural, Katherine knows, for natural terrestrial sequestration processes, all of this, they're not even releasing those subjects. So we need to start, maybe, Kyle, through the People's Network. Maybe we start hounding the administration, the Department of Energy, the EPA. We just start writing support letters to you and help you communicate this.
Well, thank you, Alice. And while we have to be very careful in terms of advocacy with the federal funding under NASEM, we clearly are have other sources of funding as well, and would love to have that conversation with you. Yes, indeed. And I'm showing we are right at the hour. I want to honor all of your time. Thank you so much for choosing to be here with us tonight, and thank you those of you who choose to view this in the future. I just want to end with a shout out to my wonderful coworkers without whom this would not be possible. Jerry Friedman, our operations director, Aaliyah Smith, our policy manager, and Marisha Malcolm. Rev Malcolm is dealing with some family stuff tonight. He sends his regrets. I know he wanted to see you, Ms. Kathy, and hates that he couldn't be here. But Marisha Malcolm, our social media director, is here. And without all of you, thank you, Miss Kathy, and my team, this would not be possible. And we appreciate all of you.
And
As Rick would say,
thank
peace,
you,
love,
Melanie, for
and
putting
light.
that link in there.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.